There are two cover-ups. First involves the Department of Justice. The second cover-up is being conducted by the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. The file is made up of thousands and thousands of bank documents, and my investigators say that it is a financial roadmap into how Epstein hurt so many families. It shows who was paying Epstein and where his money was going. It shows what banks enabled his trafficking despite evidence of money laundering and despite the knowledge that he was a sex offender. It shows payments that look like the result of blackmail. It shows big outflows of money to Eastern Europe, Turkey, and Russia, and it includes the names of women and girls. The Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Bessent, has refused now multiple times to hand it over to our investigators. Ridiculous excuses, again and again. So we have introduced legislation to compel him to turn this over to Senate investigators.
27 days ago, every single senator sent Donald Trump a clear and simple message: release the Epstein files. Congress passed a law, not a suggestion, not a request. The law requires DOJ to release the files by Friday, December 19th. In 3 days, President Trump has a choice: follow the law and release the files, or break the law and continue to hide the truth from the American people. Let me be blunt. We fully expect Trump, Bondi, and their minions to dodge, delay, or partially release these files. If they release some documents and hide others, the American people will see right through it, and they'll ask the obvious question. We are all asking the obvious question that looms. President Trump, what are you trying to hide? President Trump, what are you trying to hide? That's the question the American people are asking. Now, over the past few weeks, Senate Democrats, including my colleagues here with me, have been preparing for every scenario. We're working with the victims' attorneys. We're working with legal experts. We're working with people very familiar with this case to ensure full compliance of the law. If the administration withholds some documents unlawfully, we will know. If they abuse narrow exemptions to hide the truth, we will know. And there will be serious legal and political consequences. This law passed with near unanimous support. The survivors deserve the truth, and the American people are demanding it. This isn't political. Democrats and Republicans agree. The American people deserve the truth. So, Donald Trump, release the Epstein files. Stop hiding. Stop delaying. Come clean with the American people. And if you don't, the question will only get louder and louder and louder. Trump, what the hell are you trying to hide?
There are two cover-ups that need to be discussed this morning. The first involves the Department of Justice, and that is urgent business that we're focused on this week. The second cover-up is being conducted by the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and it deals with the financial aspects of how the sex trafficking came to be. So let's talk about them one at a time. First, as Senator Schumer said, there's good reason to be skeptical of whatever spin the Trump administration puts out on Friday. Here's why. This wouldn't be the first time Bondi tried to trick the public with a binder full of chicken feed. That's what she did back in the spring, which infuriated MAGA voters who took Trump and his cronies at their word that they'd release the files. Second, the cushy treatment by the Trump administration of Ms. Maxwell is totally unacceptable. She was right at the heart of the most notorious sex trafficking ring in modern American history. Despite that, Donald Trump himself said a pardon for Maxwell is on the table. Third, the Trump administration did assign hundreds of FBI agents to look at the Epstein file, but it wasn't to hunt down any more pedophiles. It was really to comb through the files for Donald Trump's name. Why? To protect him from public scrutiny. From the beginning, that's what they focused on with respect to Epstein. So Trump and Bondi do not deserve the benefit of the doubt. Second, we need to look at what Scott Bessent and the Treasury Department is up to here. They've got another massive set of Epstein files. It is a critical fight for transparency and to find out how this horrendous sex trafficking operation was funded. For nearly 4 years, Finance Committee investigators have been on this, and we have been following the money. And to do that, you've got to get access at the Treasury Department to the records that we have seen. The staff of major Republicans have seen them, and the file is made up of thousands and thousands of bank documents. And my investigators say that it is a financial roadmap into how Epstein hurt so many families. It shows who was paying Epstein and where his money was going. It shows what banks enabled his trafficking despite evidence of money laundering and despite the knowledge that he was a sex offender. It shows payments that look like the result of blackmail. It shows big outflows of money to Eastern Europe, Turkey, and Russia, and it includes the names of women and girls. My investigators saw a large portion of these records in 2024 under the Biden administration, but the Trump administration is denying us the file today. It's important for the American people to find out how all of this was financed, and that means getting our hands on the file to investigate further. The Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Bessent, has refused now multiple times to hand it over to our investigators. Ridiculous excuses, again and again. So we have introduced legislation to compel him to turn this over to Senate investigators. And I will tell you that Epstein survivors are already filing suit, against banks because they think that this information is so critical to finding out how they were exploited. So it is time for the stonewalling to end. That's why I so appreciate what my colleagues have done to get this information out on Friday, and the administration is required by law to release the Epstein files at DOJ. I'm here to say it's got to be done at the Treasury Department as well, because we find in America you capture corruption by following the money.
We smell a rat. Why? The president campaigned on releasing the files. Pam Bondi assured everyone the files would be released. Kash Patel said the files will be given to the public. And yet here we are. Not a single bit of these files has been released. And then what happened? Well, we had over in the House bipartisan leadership with Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie and a discharge petition. And as the discharge petition started to reach the critical number required, the House went on 8 weeks of vacation in order to avoid releasing these files. That's never happened in American history. And then we find, as they were coming back, what happened? An announcement that some new investigations were being launched. That was on November 14th. And on the evening of the 18th, Senator Schumer went to the floor, asked for unanimous consent that the bill from the House be deemed passed when it arrived in the Senate, and unanimous consent was secured from all to send this message. And what happened the next day? Pam Bondi gets up and says, we have this new information to justify new investigations. The timing of that's awfully suspicious. So the leaders in the House and the Senate demanded a meeting. We wrote to Pam Bondi, Ro Khanna, Tom Massey, myself, Ben Ray Lujan, and we were joined, and I welcomed the bipartisanship of Senator Murkowski to say, we want to know what you're up to. Meet with us and explain these new investigations. What is this new evidence? What are you undertaking? And how are you setting forward a plan to make sure all the documents are released on the 30-day notice? We got a response. The response was, we acknowledge receipt of your letter. That's it. So one of the things to watch for is the argument that vast sections had to be redacted in some cases to defend the integrity of some newly invented investigations. One way or another, we anticipate that Trump is going to continue to hide the files that should be released. We must not let it happen. We must not let it happen because we are about accountability for the perpetrators and justice for the victims, and that will not happen unless there is transparency and the documents are released in whole.
What is your plan for making progress on Senator Wyden's bill with regard to the Treasury?
Well, why don't I call on Senator Wyden?
We're going to keep pushing to find out what is behind Scott Bessent's stonewalling. The fact of the matter is, on Valentine's Day, before the administration, the Biden administration left, we went to look at the SARs, these suspicious activity reports, and we had the staff of senior Republicans, and we're going to keep pushing on a bipartisan basis to A, get all the facts out, because as Senator Schumer has said, this is not a blue and red fight, and B, to make the reforms that are necessary so this never happens again. Too many banks looked the other way. Too many auditors decided this wasn't important. This was again and again a textbook case of disinterest in suffering and families and young girls, and we're not going to let it happen again.
We're also not going to bifurcate this. It's part of one large investigation, one large disclosure. And just as we will do everything we can to alert the public what has happened on the non-financial parts of the documents, with all the horrible things that they did to these women, we're going to continue to keep pressure on the financial parts too.